I defended you while you chose someone else. From now on, I defend myself.
I didn't plan on becoming the villain of that restaurant. But when you see your wife's hand resting on another man's thigh across the table from you, something in your head stops caring about background music, social rules, or the way people will talk about you tomorrow. Madison sat to my left, poured into that red dress she used to wear for me. On my right, my son's chair was empty. She'd forgotten to remind him about dinner with Dad. Across from us sat the reason why. Brandon. Perfect beard, too white smile, shoulders like he ordered them off the internet under Alpha Male Starter Pack. He had her attention the way I hadn't seen in years. She laughed before his jokes were even finished, tilting her head, touching her hair, brushing his wrist as if gravity pulled her hand to him. Every time the waiter came, she accidentally shifted her chair closer to Brandon and further away from me. If you'd walked in right then, you'd think I was the brother-in-law tagging along. That was the first insult. The second came when he finally looked at me like I existed. "So," Brandon said, swirling his wine, "Ethan, you still doing that office thing?" Office thing. 10 years of building a company from my kitchen table, and this clown reduced it to that office thing. "Yeah," I said, keeping my tone flat, still running the firm. "Pays the bills, including this dinner." Madison's fingers tightened around her glass. "Ethan, don't start. We're having a nice evening. We, not we, as in husband and wife. We, as in her and the guy across from me." I watched how she turned to him, eyes softened, almost apologizing on my behalf. Like he was the real man at this table, and I was the embarrassing relative she'd outgrown. I've seen a lot of disrespect in my life, but that hit different. Brandon leaned back, stretching like a lion bored with the zoo. "Look, man," he said, voice dripping casual arrogance. "No hard feelings, right? Life changes. People grow apart. You can either walk away with dignity or," he smirked, "or fight reality and look pathetic." Something in my chest cooled. Not heated, cooled. Like the flame inside, snapped into a hard blue line. "Reality?" I asked quietly. "Is that what we're calling this?" Madison rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, Ethan. Don't be dramatic. You're reading into everything. We're just having dinner. Brandon's been helping me with the gym. That's all. Helping her with the gym. Right?" Brandon looked at her, then at me, and his smirk sharpened. He wanted this. He wanted a scene, something he could retell later at the bar. That's when he said it. Walk away or fight like a man. My cheating wife's new alpha told me. I gave him a better idea. Asked how many teeth he wanted left before turning dinner into a demolition scene. You know those moments when the entire room goes silent in your head, even though you can still see people moving? That's what hit me. I could feel every eye in that place turning, even if they weren't yet. The candlelight flickered off the wine glasses, the soft jazz buzzed around us, and in the middle of it, Brandon grinned like he just won. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Madison," I said, still looking at him, "is this your guy? This is the upgrade." She snapped, "Don't talk about him like that. The least you can do is show some respect." Respect for the man touching her thigh under the table. "Got it." Brandon rested his forearms on the linen, leaned in, and lowered his tone like we were in some private locker room. "Here's how this goes, Ethan," he said. "You stop clinging. You sign what needs signing. You let a real man make her happy. You can keep the kid, the house, whatever helps you sleep. But you don't get to stand in the way." There it was. So casual, like he was rearranging furniture. Madison didn't deny a thing. She just watched me, measuring how much backbone I still had left. "You're talking about my life like it's a gym membership," I said. "That's something you two discuss between sessions." Her jaw clenched. "You're twisting everything. You were never around. You married your job. Brandon actually listens. He actually sees me." She didn't even try to hide it anymore. No more pretending. No more, "We're just friends." No more late night yoga classes she swore were ladies only. The sick part? I felt relief. At least the mask was off. Brandon straightened, irritation creeping into his expression. "Last time, man. Either you walk away, or what?" I cut in. "You throw another quote from some podcast at me?" He glared. "Or we settle it. Here, you and me. No lawyers. No papers. Just two men. I looked from him to Madison. She looked excited. Not scared. Not ashamed. Excited. Like she was front row at a fight she'd secretly been wishing for. That was the final insult. I smiled. Not a nice smile. The kind you see on someone who's done being polite. You want to settle it? I asked Brandon. Fine. Let's make it simple. I slowly wiped my hands with a napkin, folded it, and put it beside my plate. My heart wasn't racing. My palms were dry. Everything inside me felt focused, brutally clear. How many teeth? I asked quietly. Do you want to keep? The table went still. His grin died in instant death. More heads turned now. The couple two tables over pretended not to stare. The waiter froze with a bottle half tilted. Brandon tried to laugh it off. You're not serious. Madison hissed. Ethan, stop it. You're embarrassing yourself. No, I said. For the first time in a long time, I'm not. I pushed my chair back, slow enough that it scraped loud against the floor, loud enough for everyone to hear. Brandon's eyes flicked around, calculating. The alpha suddenly remembered this wasn't Instagram. There was no filter for broken bones. He stood too, shoulders tensing, trying to look bigger than the fear sneaking into his eyes. If you throw the first punch, he said, that's on you. I stepped closer, so only he could hear the next part. The first punch was when you put your hands on my wife while she still had my last name. I murmured. Everything after this is just accounting. His jaw tightened. My hands curled into fists by reflex. Years of swallowing disrespect, of pretending not to notice late-night messages, sudden girls' trips, and the way Madison smiled at her phone more than she smiled at me. All of it funneled into that one quiet heartbeat before the storm. That dinner started as our civil conversation. By the time it ended, nobody in that restaurant would ever forget what happened between the three of us. And neither would I. I didn't throw the first punch in that restaurant. The manager rushed over, a waiter stepped between us with shaking hands, and someone in the back muttered about calling the police. Brandon suddenly found his alpha locked behind liability concerns and security cameras. Madison grabbed his arm, not mine, hissing at him to be smart. That was the last image before everything blurred, and my mind pulled me backward, because the truth is, that dinner wasn't the beginning. It was just the explosion. The fuse had been burning for months. It started small. It always does. First, there were the late-night spin classes Madison supposedly fell in love with. She'd never cared about the gym in 11 years of marriage. Suddenly, she was obsessed with fitness, discipline, new routines. She'd come home glowing, not tired. Phone always face down, notification silenced. Then the clothes changed. Old t-shirts disappeared. New leggings, crop tops, sports bras that looked more like invitations than workout gear started showing up. Packages on the porch, tags in the trash. I'd ask, since when are you in neon pink? And she'd shrug me off with, since I decided to stop dressing like a mom. I should have heard what she really meant, since I decided to stop dressing for you. The first real warning came on a Tuesday. I was working late at home, laptop open, eyes burning, when her phone lit up on the counter. Normally, she kept it glued to her. That night, she'd left it charging while she showered. One message popped up. No name, just a flexing arm emoji for the contact. Can't stop thinking about last night. Same time tomorrow, eh? My stomach dropped like I'd been pushed off a building. I didn't unlock it, didn't scroll, didn't snoop. I just stared at that line, feeling my heartbeat in my throat. When Madison walked back into the kitchen, towel wrapped around her hair, I was still looking at the screen. Her eyes flicked from my face to the phone and back so fast, I almost missed it. What? She asked, all sharp edges. Someone's thinking about last night, I said, my voice too calm. Same time tomorrow, apparently. She didn't even blush. Didn't stutter. She just rolled her eyes, grabbed the phone, flipped it face down again. Oh my God, Ethan, relax. It's my trainer. We were talking about the class. This is why I don't show you anything. You twist it into drama. Trainers usually have names, I said. Your guy doesn't. He does, she snapped. But his name wouldn't fit in the contact line with the emoji, okay? Not everything is a conspiracy. Maybe if you understood how workouts work, you'd get it. That's how she did it. Every time. Turn my suspicion into insecurity. My concern into weakness. You could just show me the chat, I said quietly. She laughed, actually laughed. What are you, 16? I'm not proving my innocence like some teenager. You either trust me or you don't. And then she walked away. Conversation closed. Trial dismissed. But from that night on, something poisoned the air between us. I started noticing more pieces that didn't fit. The way she'd lock herself in the bathroom with her phone, giggling under the fan. The way she'd step onto the porch to take a call from Jenna, but I'd hear a man's low voice through the glass. Every time I pushed, she pushed back harder. You're paranoid. You're boring. You're threatened because I'm finally happy. The insults came wrapped in fake concern. Maybe you should talk to someone, she'd say, eyes flat. Your jealousy is getting weird. The night I really knew was the night she forgot I existed. It was a Saturday. We planned a movie with our son, pizza, quiet evening at home. At least that's what I thought. Madison came downstairs in jeans that looked painted on and a top that wasn't made for sitting on a couch with your family. I'm heading out, she said, digging through her purse. I blinked. Out where? We had plans with Liam. She paused like she'd just remembered he existed, then shrugged. He'll be fine. Order him something. I'm meeting the girls. I told you last week. She hadn't. Which girls? I asked. Madison sighed, checking herself in the mirror by the door. Why does it matter? You don't know them. Then introduce me, I said. Or are these gym girls imaginary like Jenna's deep voice? She spun, anger flashing. You know what? I'm done justifying my every move. I gave this marriage more chances than it deserved. I'm allowed to have a life that isn't orbiting around you. Then headlights swept across the window. A car pulled up, black, low, expensive. Not one of her friends' beat-up SUVs. My chest tight, I stepped closer to the curtain and saw him for the first time. Brandon, leaning against the hood like he owned the night. Madison's entire face lit up in a way it never did for me anymore. She turned back to me, cold and smug. Don't wait up, she said. You wouldn't survive that crowd anyway. The door slammed behind her. And that was the moment I stopped wondering if something was wrong and started planning how deep this betrayal went. Discovering something is wrong hurts. Proving it feels like carving your own heart out with a dull knife. After Madison walked out that night with Brandon, I didn't follow her. I didn't scream. I didn't punch a wall like the movies teach men to do. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at our son's untouched pizza, feeling something inside me go silent. Silence is dangerous. It's where truth grows teeth. Liam came downstairs half an hour later. Where's Mom? He asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. With her friends, I said. He frowned, the same confused wrinkle I'd seen on my face in the mirror for months. She said she was going out with Uncle Brandon again. Uncle? My blood turned to ice. When did she call him that? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Since he started picking her up, Liam said. She said not to tell you. Kids don't know how to lie correctly. They don't cover tracks. They just repeat what they're told. And in that single sentence, he handed me a loaded gun made of information. Madison wasn't hiding her affair from everyone. Just me. That's when something in me snapped. Not the angry part, the focused part. The one that wakes up when something must be done. The version of me that built a company from nothing. The version she used to brag about before she decided I was boring. So I got to work. I went upstairs, opened my laptop, and dug into the account I'd forgotten existed. The family phone plan. Madison had insisted years ago that she needed her own line for privacy, but the bills still synced through mine. She thought ignoring numbers meant deleting them from existence. I found Brandon's number in under 30 seconds. And then I saw it. 174 calls in 1 month. Some as short as a minute. Some past midnight. One lasted 2 hours and 39 minutes. 2 hours is not about fitness. 2 hours is intimacy. Scrolling deeper, I saw patterns. Calls before errands that used to take her 10 minutes, but suddenly require an hour. Calls right after she'd storm out of the room following a minor disagreement. Calls just before she'd go clear her mind at the gym. It wasn't just cheating. It was rehearsed betrayal. But the worst part? Seeing how precisely she'd rewritten history. Every moment I thought was marriage was just her staging alibis. You don't realize you've been edited out of your own life until you see the timestamps of your erasure. My hand shook, not from rage. Rage was clean. This was filthier. It was humiliation dipped in clarity. The realization that Brandon wasn't a mistake. He was a plan. That night, sleep didn't come. I sat in the dark, waiting. At 2:17 a.m., headlights flashed across the living room again. Madison tiptoed inside like a teenager sneaking past curfew. She didn't see me sitting there, silhouette against the window. She removed her heels quietly, humming. Humming. Happy. The woman who used to sigh when I kissed her cheek now glowed after someone else touched her. I let her reach the stairs before I spoke. How was girls' night? She froze. Didn't turn. Didn't breathe. It was the kind of stillness predators have before deciding whether to run or attack. Then came the lie. Smooth. Practiced. It was fine, she said. Why are you awake? Family plans, I replied, like knowing when my wife is sleeping with another man. Even then, even with the truth pinned to the wall like a trophy, she didn't flinch. She didn't apologize, panic, or explain. She scoffed. Here we go, she muttered, turning slowly toward me. You're so insecure, Ethan. You invent problems just so you can feel like a victim. It's pathetic. Pathetic. Not Brandon. Not the affair. Not the hours spent sneaking around. Me. I stood, walked toward her, and held up the printout I'd made of the phone logs. The pages shook in my hand. Not from fear, from the weight of what they meant. Madison stared at them, then laughed short, sharp, cruel. You printed phone records? God, you really are losing your mind. No, I said quietly. I'm just done pretending. Her smile died. For the first time, I saw the truth behind her eyes. This wasn't guilt. This wasn't shame. This was a woman who felt untouchable. You won't do anything, she said, stepping closer, her voice low and venomous. You don't have the guts. Brandon's right. Real men move on. Weak ones cling. There it was. The line that turned suspicion into certainty. The match that lit the rest of the story on fire. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just nodded. Good, I whispered. Then you won't see what's coming. Madison blinked, confused for the first time, because she didn't know the difference between a man who is angry and a man who has made a decision. And decisions don't scream. They detonate. Once you realize the person you married never existed, every memory becomes a crime scene. The next morning, Madison acted like nothing had happened. She hummed while making coffee, scrolled through her phone, laughed at notifications that weren't meant for me, and floated around the kitchen like a woman living her best life. Not a wife who'd been caught poisoning her marriage with another man. She didn't apologize. She didn't deny. She didn't even negotiate. She behaved like I was an inconvenience, like I was a piece of furniture she hadn't gotten around to replacing yet. Don't forget Liam's practice later, she said, sliding past me without eye contact. Brandon might swing by. He said he could help. Help. Help raise my son. Help take my place. I didn't answer. Instead, I watched her, really watched her, the way you watch a wild animal when you finally understand it's not domesticated. Every laugh, every shrug, every dismissive glance was something I'd once excused as stress, distraction, or exhaustion. Now I saw it for what it was. Contempt wrapped in convenience. Around noon, she emerged from the bathroom wearing a tight navy top I'd never seen before. Her hair was curled, her lips outlined in a shade that screamed, "Notice me." She smelled like she'd bathed in attention. Going out, I asked. She didn't pause long enough to be offended. Yeah, gym stuff. Don't wait up. Gym stuff. The new gospel. I let her walk out, didn't say a word. But when the door closed, I got to work. There's a moment in every betrayal when emotion burns away and logic takes over. Rage screams. Logic whispers. Whispering is more dangerous. First, I checked her bank account. Madison had made small withdrawals over weeks. Not enough to raise alarms, but frequent enough to feel like breadcrumbs. Payments to a studio I'd never heard of. A luxurious sports clinic. A boutique hotel 30 minutes from a city. She didn't just cheat. She built a second life and funded it with my money. Some men break at this stage. They collapse, drink, cry, grovel for explanations that don't exist. I didn't. My pulse slowed. My head cleared. I opened a folder on my desktop labeled marriage, a digital coffin I'd never intended to fill. Inside, I dropped screenshots of transactions, location logs, her gym membership invoice, and photos she'd uploaded to the cloud without realizing I had access. There she was with Brandon, arms around each other. No shame, no hesitation. Her smile was the kind that comes from permission, not regret. It didn't hurt anymore. It informed. At 4:23 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Madison. Be home late. Don't wait. Brandon's helping me with a routine. Routine. The woman didn't have routines. She had addictions. I replied, take your time. I'll handle things here. Short, friendly, forgettable. But inside me, something had shifted. Not broken, shifted. When she finally returned, I was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, calm like a man who had already rehearsed the ending. She froze. Not because she feared consequences, but because she could sense something different in the air. What? She snapped, annoyed I existed. Stop staring at me. I wasn't staring, I said. I was waiting. For what? She asked. For you. Her eyes narrowed. This again? Ethan, you need therapy. No, I said, standing slowly. Therapy is what people do to save something. I'm not here to save anything. Something flickered across her face. Confusion, fear, then anger that someone dared interrupt her fantasy timeline. You're being dramatic, she said. You'll calm down. You always do. Not this time. Madison, I said, voice steady. I know everything. Not the stupid excuses. Not the half-truths. Everything. Her face drained of color. Not guilt, but annoyance. I wasn't supposed to evolve. I was supposed to crumble on cue. Then she made the mistake of the century. She smirked. You won't do anything, Ethan, she said softly. Men like you never do. It wasn't the words. It was the certainty. She believed she'd won. She believed I was predictable. She believed Brandon had replaced me. And that's when the final piece snapped into place. Madison didn't just cheat on me. She bet on me losing. I leaned in, close enough for her to hear every syllable. Madison, I whispered, you have no idea what a man becomes after he buries the version of himself that loved you. Her expression cracked. Not guilt. Not love, but something she never planned for. Fear. For the first time, she realized I wasn't fighting for the marriage. I was preparing for the burial. Not hers. Not Brandon's. The burial of the man she thought I was. And what rises after that doesn't negotiate. It collects. Fear changes a person. Not instantly, not loudly. Quietly, like a door you didn't know was open until cold air slips through. Madison didn't scream, apologize, or crumble when she realized I knew everything. She froze, studied me, and recalculated. That's what predators do when their prey stops running. Ethan, she said slowly, voice suddenly softer, sugar-coated venom. We don't have to make this ugly. Make this ugly. As if she hadn't already dragged our life through the mud and wiped her shoes on the marriage certificate. I didn't reply. Silence unnerved her more than rage ever could. She reached for her purse, nervous tick, stalling mechanism, but her hand shook. A tremor. The first visible crack in the porcelain queen she'd sculpted herself into. What are you planning? She asked, trying to sound amused, but her voice quivered at the edges. Going to cry to your lawyer? I smiled. Not a pleasant expression, but the kind a man gives when he knows the storm is already here and he's the one who called the thunder. No, I said, just adjusting. Her head tilted. Adjusting what? My life. She flinched at that. Not because she cared, she didn't, but because it meant something was happening outside her control. Madison thrived on dominance, on predictability, on knowing exactly where the emotional levers were. Suddenly, she couldn't find mine. She stepped closer, lowering her voice like we were conspirators at a secret meeting. You're overreacting, she whispered. This isn't what you think. That line, this isn't what you think, is the national anthem of cheaters. I'd heard enough. I walked past her, calm, collected. Her perfume, once comforting, now smelled like someone else's fingerprints on my life. I headed for the study, where the folder sat open on my desk. Documents, screenshots, timelines, everything cataloged like evidence. Madison followed, more frantic now. What are you doing? Why are you printing things? Are you spying on me? I turned, holding her gaze. I am documenting. Documenting what? Reality. Her face twisted. She wasn't afraid of being wrong. She was afraid of losing control of the narrative. You think anyone will believe you? She snapped. Do you know how pathetic you'll look dragging personal issues into court? Brandon said. There it was. Brandon said. Not her husband said. Her lover said. Her new philosopher, her new prophet, her new oxygen. I cut her off. Brandon thinks a lot for a man who can't finish a sentence without flexing. Her jaw clenched so hard I thought a tooth might crack. You're jealous, she spat. He's confident. He doesn't hide in paperwork and numbers. He's not afraid to live. You used to be someone, Ethan. Now you're just pathetic. The word stabbed differently this time. Not because it hurt, but because I realized it was the spell she'd been casting for months. If she could convince me I was less, then Brandon could feel like more. But spells only work if you believe them. I closed the folder, slid it into a briefcase, and locked it. Madison watched the motion like it was the pulling of a trigger. You won't leave, she said, voice shaky but defiant. You can't. You don't have the courage. You don't have. I have something better, I said quietly. She blinked. What? A destination. She didn't understand. Not yet. But she felt it. The shift. The tectonic cracking of the foundation she'd danced on. I picked up my keys, my phone, and my wallet. Where are you going? She demanded. To breathe. She scoffed, but panic flickered behind her eyes. You think running away fixes anything? I'm not running, I said. I'm preparing. For what? For the moment you realize Brandon didn't upgrade you. He recruited you. She frowned, lost. I stepped past her, paused in the doorway, and added one final truth she wasn't ready for. You fell in love with a mirror. Madison, you just don't know the reflection isn't yours. Her mouth opened to respond, but no words came. I left her standing there, alone, furious, confused, and for the first time in months, I felt oxygen enter my lungs without resistance. The door shut behind me with a click that sounded less like an exit and more like a countdown beginning. Because betrayal hurts. But what comes after betrayal? That's hunger. And men who've tasted humiliation don't chase closure. They chase equilibrium, one way or another. And Madison had no idea how close she was to becoming the lesson instead of the teacher. There's a moment right before a storm breaks when the air doesn't move. No breeze, no sound, no warning, just pressure. That's what my life felt like the next morning. The house was quiet, not peaceful, but expectant, like the walls were waiting to see which one of us would explode first. Madison avoided me, clinging to her phone like it was an oxygen tank. Every few minutes it vibrated, and she'd glance at the screen, smile, then tilt the device away from me as if privacy were suddenly a sacred religion. The betrayal wasn't casual anymore. It was ceremonial. I decided on one thing. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was choosing. By noon, Madison emerged from the bedroom dressed like she wasn't married. Tight jeans, low neckline, sunglasses indoors. She smelled like she'd bathed in compliments from a man who didn't pay the mortgage. I'm going out, she said, voice clipped like I was her doorman. Where? I asked, not because I expected the truth, but because lies reveal patterns. She rolled her eyes. Why do you care? You checked out of this marriage ages ago. A lie so polished she almost believed it. You're right, I said. I had to check out. Last night, in fact. Confusion flickered. Her script didn't include me agreeing. Whatever, she muttered. Brandon's waiting. She caught herself too late. The name slipped out like a tattoo she forgot to hide. Her lips parted, realizing what she'd admitted. I didn't react. I just smiled. Tell him I said hi. Her cheeks flushed, not with shame, but with the horror of losing control of the narrative. She stormed out, slamming the door violently enough to rattle the picture frames. The silence afterward felt like an answer. I sat on the living room couch, phone in hand. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for until it arrived. A text from an unknown number. Not Brandon's number. A different one. You coming tonight? Brandon says it's time to settle things like men. No greeting, no explanation, just a challenge wrapped in testosterone and stupidity. Attached was an address, an upscale steakhouse downtown. The same place our civil dinner had nearly become an audit of dental insurance. I stared at the message, the corners of my mouth lifting. So that was the play. Brandon wasn't satisfied with taking my wife. He wanted a spectacle. He wanted to humiliate me, crown himself king, and parade Madison like a trophy. He expected me to break, to beg, to plead. He miscalculated. A man who has lost everything doesn't beg. He becomes unshakable. He becomes clean, not morally, but mentally. Pain strips away fear like acid burning paint off metal. I type one word back. Tonight. Within moments, 3 dots appeared, then a reply. Or something nice. Madison wants closure. Closure. The word tasted like rusted metal. Madison didn't want closure. She wanted confirmation, proof she made the right choice. She wanted Brandon to prove he was stronger, louder, more alpha. Whatever delusion she'd inhaled to justify the grave she'd dug. But here's what she didn't understand. Closure isn't a conversation. Closure is a transformation. The sun dipped, painting long shadows across the floor. Hours passed while I sat there, unmoving, letting my thoughts sharpen. I didn't prepare fists or speeches. I prepared presence. At 7:19 p.m., I grabbed my jacket. As I reached the front door, my phone buzzed again. Another message. This one from Madison. Don't do anything stupid. Tonight is about ending this with dignity. Ending. Dignity. These people loved words they didn't understand. I typed back. I agree. One of us needs dignity. Tonight we find out who. No threats. No profanity. No promises. Just truth sharpened to a point. I arrived early. The restaurant buzzed with low voices, silverware, and overpriced self-importance. I took a seat at a corner table, facing the entrance. Then they walked in. Madison entered first, arm hooked through Brandon's like she'd rehearsed it. She didn't look guilty. She looked proud, like betrayal was a personality trait she'd added to her resume. Brandon saw me and smirked. Again, that same cheap grin like he'd bought confidence on sale. He approached my table, placed both hands on the surface, and leaned in until I could smell his cologne. Something synthetic and desperate. You showed, he said. Good. Let's wrap this up like men. I didn't blink. Define like men, I said. He grinned wider, showing teeth as if presenting inventory. You walk away, or you fight and lose. His arrogance wasn't offensive. It was educational. He genuinely believed Madison was a prize, not a test. Madison hovered behind him, arms crossed, smirk sharpened to a blade. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her presence was a taunt, a sermon, a dare. Brandon straightened. So what's it going to be? And in that moment, clarity hit me like a hammer made of calm. He thought this was the battle. He didn't know I'd already won the war the moment I stopped needing her. I leaned forward, voice measured. Brandon, I said, men don't fight for what's broken. They fight for what's theirs. He opened his mouth, ready with another cliché. I didn't give him the chance. Question is, I added, do you know the difference? His expression finally shifted. Not victory, not anger. Recognition. Because for the first time, he understood. I wasn't there to compete for Madison. I was there to enter kingdom. And kings don't swing fists. They remove crowns. Quietly. Permanently. Brandon expected a reaction. That was his first mistake. Men like him feed on chaos. They need shouting, threats, broken bottles, something they can punch at and call victory. But I didn't give him anything. I just stared, calm as a surgeon preparing to make the first incision. You're quiet, he finally said, leaning closer. Second thoughts. No, it'll be ya. Just wondering which part of your ego is going to crack first. He blinked. He wasn't prepared for a man who wasn't intimidated. He'd written my role in his head. Jealous husband, emotional wreck, desperate loser clawing for scraps of a woman who had already decided he wasn't enough. But I wasn't here for Madison. Not anymore. I was here because a man should choose the ending of his own story, not inherit the one someone else writes for him. Brandon looked back at Madison, silently begging for approval. She nodded, smiling like a queen descending from a throne no one voted her onto. Tell him, she whispered, her tone dripping satisfaction. Brandon straightened. Madison and I are together now. You're holding her back. Be a grown-up. Sign the papers. Let her be happy. Let her be happy. Like she was a rescue dog and I was the cage. I didn't look at him. I looked at her. Is that what you want? Madison didn't hesitate. That hurt me more than any punch could have. Yes, she said. You and I were done long before Brandon showed up. You lacked ambition. You stopped trying. Pero entonces me. Ambition. The word echoed like a joke. I had built the very life she now used as collateral for her reinvention. I paid for the gym where she met him. I paid for the phone she used to lie. I financed her confidence, and she spent it on another man. She continued, oblivious to how far she had drifted from anything human. Brandon makes me feel alive. He challenges me. He doesn't suffocate me with responsibility. He let me be who I want. What you want? I repeated, voice flat. And who is that? She didn't answer. She smiled instead. A smile sharpened into a blade. There are people who destroy you out of weakness. Madison destroyed from hunger. She needed someone to validate the version of herself she couldn't live alone with. Brandon cleared his throat, breaking the silence. Look, man, here's how this goes. You walk away with dignity, or I cut him off. Stop using that word. What word? Dignity, I said. You don't get to weaponize values you don't possess. He bristled. You think you're better than us? No, Iravia. I think I'm finished pretending we're equals. Madison scoffed. You're pathetic. I smiled, not because it didn't hurt, but because it no longer mattered. Maybe, I said, but at least I don't confuse validation with value. That's when Brandon leaned forward, voice dropping into that rehearsed alpha tone he probably practiced in bathroom mirrors. Walk away or fight like a man. There it was, the creed of insecure men masquerading as warriors. I didn't flinch. I gave you a better idea, I said. I asked how many teeth you wanted left before dinner turns into a demolition scene. The restaurant went still. Forks froze. Breaths held. Brandon's confidence flickered. Not gone, just cracked. He hadn't expected a man who wasn't afraid of consequences. He expected begging. He got composure. Madison stepped closer, whispering urgently, Don't start, Ethan. You'll embarrass yourself. Embarrass myself? I repeated. Madison, I've been embarrassed for months. I just didn't realize it until now. Her eyes narrowed, calculating. You won't hit him. You're not violent. You're right, I said. I'm not violent. I am precise. Brandon braced himself, fists tightening. And then I did something neither of them understood. I sat back down. No raised fists. No broken glass. No road. Just a man reclaiming his position at the table. You wanted to fight? I asked calmly. Here it is. Madison scoffed. This isn't a fight. Oh, but it is, I said, leaning in. You two thought the battlefield was strength, muscles, bravado. I shook my head. The battlefield is identity. And neither of you knows who you are without an audience. Brandon opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. You didn't steal my wife, I continued. I outgrew her. You're not my replacement. You're my recycle bin. The table inhaled as if it shared lungs. Madison's face crumpled from superiority to disbelief. For the first time, she saw something terrifying. Not a broken man, a man who had stopped needing her. Brandon clenched his jaw. You're leaving with nothing. No, I said. I'm leaving with everything you can't measure. He frowned. What's that? Myself. I stood. Enjoy the kingdom. I added. It always collapses when the queen is hollow. And I walked away, not because I lost, but because there was nothing left to win. The war was never about them. It was about who I refused to become. And tomorrow? Tomorrow was the day consequences woke up hungry. People think stories end with the breakup, the punch, the dramatic line that sends someone storming out of a restaurant. But endings don't happen in moments. They happen in echoes. They happen in the days when silence weighs more than words ever did. The next morning, I woke up alone, not physically, but spiritually. Madison still lived under my roof, but that house wasn't a home anymore. It was a battlefield that had already been conquered, the flags removed, the anthem replaced with indifference. She avoided me like guilt was contagious. She moved quietly, tiptoeing through rooms as if I were a sleeping animal she didn't want to provoke. The irony? I'd never been calmer. Betrayal had burned away every weakness I had ever mistaken for love. By noon, I'd already filed the paperwork. Divorce, custody, asset protection. Not a war of fists, not Brandon's primitive playground, but a war of documentation, timestamps, and signatures. The type of war men like Brandon never see coming, because they don't understand power unless it punches them. That afternoon, the door opened and Madison walked in. No swagger this time. No esmirk. Something had drained her. Or maybe something had finally entered her. Reality. "You went to the courthouse?" she asked, voice thin, like someone had sanded down her confidence. "Yes," I said without looking up. "You didn't talk to me about this." "You didn't talk to me about Brandon," I replied. She swallowed. "Arguments don't work when they bounce off logic." "I didn't think you'd actually leave," she whispered. Of course she didn't. Madison never recognized endings unless she was the one delivering them. "You thought I'd cling," I said. "You gambled on the version of me you created." She looked away, jaw trembling. Not from grief, but from the shock of losing her script. Madison wasn't mourning the marriage. She was mourning control. "What about Liam?" she said, desperate for something solid to hold. "He'll stay with me," I answered. A home should have honesty. A flicker of guilt or panic crossed her face. "You can't just decide that." "I already did." She stepped closer, voice trembling. "This isn't fair." "Fair." I laughed, not loudly, but sharply enough to cut. "Madison, you don't get to burn the bridge and then complain about the smoke." Her face broke, not theatrically, but genuinely. The queen had finally realized her kingdom was made of glass. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. "Nothing." That was the truth. I wanted absolutely nothing. "I don't want anything," I said. "Needing something from you is what kept me blind." She sank into a chair, shoulders collapsing inward. For the first time in years, she looked small. Not the seductive version she crafted at the gym, not the confident woman telling me I wasn't enough, just a person whose power evaporated the moment the audience left. "What about us?" she asked, voice trembling, hope flickering like a dying match. "There was no us," I replied. "There was me trying, and you auditioning for someone else." Her eyes filled with tears, not sentimental tears, but the tears of someone who realizes the safety net is gone. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. I met her eyes, calm as winter. "I did at the moment you chose someone else's reflection over my reality." Silence. And then, right when I thought the scene was over, the doorbell rang. Madison froze. Brandon stood outside, hands in his pockets, grin gone, arrogance dissolved. Suddenly, he wasn't an alpha. He was a man out of depth. "Madison," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. "We need to talk." "No," I said, stepping between them. "You two had conversations behind my back. This one happens without me." Brandon swallowed. He understood the hierarchy now. Not the chest-beating version, but the quiet one. The version built on consequence. Madison stepped outside with him, door closing behind them. For the first time, I didn't care what they said. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need closure. I didn't need a winner. They were just echoes now. 10 minutes later, Madison re-entered the house alone. "He left," she whispered. "Things that aren't real usually do," I replied. She lowered herself onto the couch, hands shaking. The woman who once strutted through our home like she owned the air now struggled to breathe in it. "What am I supposed to do?" she asked. "Learn," I said. "Not about loyalty. That ship sailed. Learn what happens when you replace respect with attention." She stared at me, eyes red, face pale, voice barely audible. "I never thought you'd be the one to leave. I never thought you'd be the one to make me," I replied. There it was, the whole truth, wrapped in one final breath. Not rage, not desperation, just clarity. I walked toward the door, keys in hand, future in front of me. Madison stood, voice cracking. "Ethan, what now?" I turned, only once. "Now," I said, "I live." Her tears fell. Not for me, not for us, but for the realization she hadn't lost a man. She'd lost a mirror she could no longer hide from. And as the door closed behind me, I didn't feel broken. I felt rebuilt. Not healed, reborn. Because betrayal doesn't end you. It introduces you to the version of yourself you should have been all along.